For over 3,000 cycles, the Orion expanse had been governed by one unchallenged authority, the Celestial Accord. It was not an empire in the traditional sense. It was something more refined, more controlled. A coalition of ancient species who believed they had transcended war itself. Conflicts were resolved through influence, sanctions, and calculated pressure, not brute force. At least that was the illusion. Among the countless civilizations under the Accord's watchful eye, there existed a forbidden topic. A story dismissed by scholars, ridiculed by politicians, and erased from official archives. Humanity. Not a species, they said, but a myth. A cautionary tale. According to fragmented records, humans were once a rising power from a distant system known only as Sol 3. They were described as volatile, adaptive, and terrifyingly resilient. A species that thrived under pressure and evolved through conflict. But no physical evidence remained. No ruins. No signals. No survivors. Just stories. Stories of a civilization that fought wars so brutal they scarred entire star systems. Stories of fleets that refused surrender even when defeat was certain. Stories of a species that did not simply survive extinction events, but learned from them. And then, they vanished. The Accord declared them extinct. Case closed. That belief held firm, until the fall of Kaeldar Prime. Kaeldar was not just another world, it was a fortress system. A critical hub controlled by the Virex Dominion, a militaristic regime that had recently begun expanding beyond its borders. Unlike the Accord, the Virex believed in strength. And they had it. Their fleets were vast. Their soldiers genetically enhanced. Their weapons capable of cracking planetary shields within hours. For decades, no one dared oppose them. Until something unexpected happened. It began as a distortion. A ripple in deep space just beyond the outer defense perimeter. At first, Kaeldar's sensors dismissed it as a gravitational anomaly. A harmless fluctuation. But within minutes, the readings began to spike. Energy levels climbed beyond measurable limits. Space itself began to warp. Then, it tore open. Not a wormhole. Not a gate. Something far more violent. A rift. A jagged wound in reality, stretching across thousands of kilometers, crackling with unstable energy. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Alive, unnatural. And from its depths, something emerged. The first ship was massive. Not elegant like Accord vessels. Not organic like the biofleets of the Zenthari. This was something else. Angular. Reinforced. Scarred. Its hull bore the marks of countless battles. Scorch lines, impact craters, entire sections replaced with mismatched plating. It was not built for beauty. It was built to survive. Then came another. And another. Within minutes, the void beyond Kaeldar was filled with them. Hundreds, then thousands. An entire armada. Silent. Motionless. Waiting. Panic spread through the Virex command network. Unknown fleet detected. No matching signatures. Energy readings off the scale. Requesting identification. No response. Supreme Commander Threx Valen stood at the center of the command spire, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display. Prepare the fleet, he ordered coldly. No unknown force enters Virex space unchallenged. A transmission was sent. Standard protocol. Identify yourselves or be fired upon. For a moment there was nothing. Then, a signal returned. Not complex. Not encrypted. Simple. Direct. Ancient. The language took several seconds to process, because it had not been used in over 2,000 cycles. When it finally translated, the entire command chamber fell silent. This is the United Human Systems. Pause. Then. We have come back. Confusion spread like wildfire. Human systems? Impossible. They are extinct. This must be a deception. Commander Valen narrowed his eyes. Extinct species do not command fleets, he said. Then without hesitation. Fire. The Virex fleet responded instantly. Thousands of warships unleashed a coordinated barrage, plasma lances, ion storms, antimatter bursts. The combined firepower could annihilate a planet. The void lit up like a dying star. Every weapon struck the lead human vessel. The explosion should have ended it. It didn't. As the light faded, the ship remained. Damaged but intact. Its shields flickered, then stabilized. Its engines roared to life. And then, moved. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Human ships surged forward in perfect formation. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Their movements were precise, almost mathematical. Their weapons fired. Not beams. Not energy blasts. Kinetic rounds. Solid projectiles accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. The first impact shattered a Virex cruiser instantly. The second tore through 3 ships in a single line. The third didn't stop. Virex shields, designed to withstand stellar radiation, collapsed under the sheer force. Armor plating disintegrated. Entire fleets were reduced to debris in seconds. Return fire. Adjust formations. Fall back. Orders flooded the network. None of it mattered. The humans adapted in real time. Every maneuver countered. Every strategy predicted. They fought not like soldiers, but like survivors. Within 30 minutes, the outer Virex fleet was gone. Within 1 hour, their defensive grid collapsed. Within 2, Kale their prime stood alone. Commander Valen stared at the destruction in disbelief. This is not possible. Behind him, an officer spoke, voice trembling. They're not targeting civilians. Valen turned sharply. What? Population centers untouched. Infrastructure intact. They're only targeting military assets. That made it worse. The transmission returned. Same voice. Same tone. Calm. Controlled. Unemotional. The fall of Kale their prime was not just a military defeat. It was a psychological shockwave. Across the Orion expanse, long-range observatories, deep space relays, and covert intelligence networks replayed the same footage again and again. A single unknown fleet. An entire dominion erased. In hours. At the heart of the galaxy, within the radiant chambers of the Celestial Accord, an emergency convocation had been called. For the first time in centuries, every major species attended. Even those who had abandoned the Accord long ago. Fear had a way of restoring unity. High Arbiter Lysara Ven stood at the center of the chamber, her luminous form flickering slightly, a rare sign of instability. This gathering is now in session, she announced. Her voice, usually calm and absolute, carried something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. A massive holographic projection filled the chamber. Kale their prime. Before and after. The contrast was chilling. No mass destruction. No planetary annihilation. No genocide. Instead, precision. Control. Replacement. They didn't conquer, one delegate whispered. They transitioned power. A low, gravelly voice echoed from the far side of the chamber. The warlord Grathkull of the Iron Clans leaned forward, his armored plating scraping against itself. That is worse. Murmurs spread. Because deep down, they all understood. A species that destroys can be resisted. A species that replaces, cannot. Lysara gestured and the projection shifted. Now displaying intercepted human transmissions, fleet formations, tactical overlays. Every movement analyzed. Every action studied. They are not improvising, said Scholar Tern Solis, one of the Accord's foremost strategists. This is doctrine. He expanded a tactical map. Their formations adapt dynamically. They don't rely on fixed patterns. Instead, they use predictive modeling, anticipating enemy responses before they occur. Educational insight, value add. In military science, this is known as adaptive warfare strategy, where decisions are continuously updated based on real-time data, reducing reaction time and increasing efficiency. It's considered one of the highest forms of combat intelligence. They're learning as they fight, another counselor added. No, Turing corrected quietly. They already learned. We're just seeing the results. A silence fell over the chamber. Heavy. Unavoidable. Then came the question no one wanted to ask. Where have they been? The answer came from an unexpected source. Archivist Elyon Mar, keeper of pre-Accord records. He rarely spoke. And when he did, it was never good news. There is something you all need to see. The chamber dimmed. A new file appeared. Corrupted. Recovered from restricted archives. Title. Project Eclipse, Final Report. Lysara's light flickered again. That file was sealed. Elyon nodded. For a reason. The report began to play. Fragments of text. Broken recordings. Distorted voices. Human expansion exceeded projections. Alliance request denied. Risk level, uncontrollable. Recommendation, containment, or erasure. The chamber erupted. Erasure? You tried to wipe them out? Lysara raised her voice. Silence. But it was already too late. The truth was out. The Accord had not simply forgotten humanity. They had feared it. Elyon continued. The records are incomplete, but the conclusion is clear. He looked around the chamber. We did not lose humanity. Pause. We pushed them away, far from the council chambers. Aboard the flagship UHS Aegis Prime, Admiral Kale Ryan stood before a massive viewport, watching as Kael'thar's orbit transformed. Where once there had been chaos, now there was order. Defense platforms rebuilt. Trade routes re-established. Civilian signals increasing. Behind him, Commander Iris Vale reviewed incoming reports. Stability index rising, she said. Local population compliance, 82% and increasing. Kale nodded slowly. Fear fades, he said. Security replaces it. Iris hesitated. Some would say we're doing exactly what they feared. Kale turned slightly. And what is that? Becoming the dominant power. A faint smile touched his lips. We already are. Suddenly, a chime echoed across the bridge. Admiral, the ship's AI announced. We have incoming long-range signals. Kale didn't turn. Source. A brief pause. Multiple. The holographic display activated. Dozens of signals. Then hundreds. Not attacks. Not threats. Messages. Distress calls. Surrender requests. Petitions. Entire systems, reaching out. They're asking for protection, Iris said, stunned. Kale stepped closer to the display. Reading. Analyzing. They've lost faith in the Accord, he said quietly. Educational insight, value add. In political science, this shift is called a legitimacy collapse. When populations no longer believe their governing system can protect or represent them. When that happens, power rapidly transfers to whoever can provide stability. They're choosing us, Iris whispered. Kale's expression darkened slightly. No, he said. They're choosing survival. Back in the Celestial Accord, panic had begun to replace order. They're expanding without resistance. 5 systems have already defected. Our outer colonies are requesting evacuation. Lysara slammed her staff against the chamber floor. Enough. Silence fell again. But it was fragile now. We must respond strategically, she said. Not emotionally. Grathkull scoffed. Strategy won't stop them. Then what do you suggest? Lysara snapped. The warlord leaned forward. For once, we do what they do. The chamber stiffened. We fight, he said. Meanwhile, in the void between systems, the human armada moved again. Not randomly. Not aggressively. Purposefully. New coordinates locked. New targets selected. But these were not strongholds. Not empires. Weak systems. Vulnerable ones. Worlds that had once been ignored. Exploited. Left behind. Iris noticed it first. Admiral, these aren't strategic targets. Kale nodded. I know. Then why? He looked at her. And for the first time, there was something deeper in his eyes. Because this isn't just a war. Pause. It's a correction. Far across the galaxy, a small, forgotten colony received a transmission. For generations they had lived under threat. Rated. Ignored by the Accord. Their leaders expected another demand. Another order. Another disappointment. Instead, they received this. This is the United Human Systems. You are no longer under threat. Silence. Then, ships appeared in orbit. Not weapons. Not destruction. Relief. And slowly, system by system, world by world, the galaxy began to change. Not through conquest, but through choice. Back aboard the Aegis Prime, Kale watched it all unfold. Iris stood beside him. There won't be a war like they expect, she said. No, Kale replied. They'll lose long before the first major battle. He looked out into the endless stars. Because they still don't understand us. Pause. They think we came back for revenge. His voice dropped. Cold. Certain. But we came back for something much bigger. Far away. Deep within restricted Accord archives. A final encrypted file activated. Triggered automatically by recent events. Its title appeared slowly. Sol Protocol, status, active. And beneath it, one line. Earth location, classified. Access denied, even to the Accord. The truth was still hidden. But not for long. The Orion Expanse stood on the edge of something irreversible. Not war. Not yet. Something worse. A shift in power. For centuries, the Celestial Accord had maintained control not through strength, but through belief. Belief that they were necessary. Belief that they were stable. Belief that they were in charge. That belief was dying. System after system had already aligned themselves with the United Human Systems. Not conquered. Not forced. Chosen. And that terrified the Accord more than any fleet ever could. Inside the central chamber, the atmosphere had changed completely. Gone were the calm debates. Gone was the illusion of control. Now there was only urgency. High Arbiter Lysara Ven stood before a live tactical display. Red zones marked human-controlled space. And they were spreading. Fast. "We are losing influence at an exponential rate," reported Scholar Turin Solis. "At this pace, within 3 cycles, nearly 40% of independent systems will fall under human protection." Grathkull slammed his fist against the platform. "Then we don't wait 3 cycles." His voice thundered across the chamber. "We strike now. Full force." Lysara turned sharply. "And do what?" "Repeat the Virex mistake. They were weak." "No," she said coldly. "They were arrogant." A silence followed. Because deep down, they knew the difference. Meanwhile, far beyond the core systems, the first real confrontation was about to begin. The Velker Corridor. A strategic hyperspace route connecting 12 major systems. If humanity controlled it, they would control trade, movement, and communication across an entire sector. The Accord could not allow that. For the first time in centuries, they deployed a unified fleet. Thousands of ships, from dozens of species, each bringing their best technology, their strongest weapons, their finest commanders. At the center of it all stood Fleet Marshal Rin Talvek, a veteran of 100 conflicts, a tactician without equal. He stared at the tactical map, at the incoming human fleet. "They're not slowing down," his officer reported. No defensive posture. No hesitation. Talvek narrowed his eyes. Of course they're not. Because now, he understood something the others didn't. Humans didn't fight to test strength. They fought to end threats. On the bridge of the UHS Aegis Prime, Admiral Kale Ryan received the same data. "Accord fleet confirmed," Iris said. "Full coalition. This is their main response." Kale stepped forward, studying the formations, the positioning, the intent. "They've learned," he said quietly. Iris looked at him. "Is that a problem?" He shook his head slightly. "No." Pause. "It just means this will be faster." Educational insight, value add. In strategic warfare, large coalitions often struggle with coordination inefficiency. Different doctrines, communication styles, and command structures slow decision-making, making them vulnerable against a unified force with a single command hierarchy. And that was exactly what the humans had. One command. One doctrine. One purpose. The distance closed. The Velker Corridor became a silent battlefield. No words. No warnings. Just tension. Then, the Accord fired first. A coordinated barrage from thousands of ships. Energy beams, plasma waves, gravitational distortions. The void lit up with destructive brilliance. And once again, human ships took the hit. But this time, they didn't just endure. They adapted instantly. Shield modulation changing. An Accord officer shouted. "They're recalibrating against our weapons in real time." Talvek's expression hardened. Switch frequencies. Rotate attack patterns. Orders were executed. Weapons adjusted. New strategies deployed. For a moment, it worked. Human ships slowed. Formation shifted. Damage registered. Hope flickered. Then, it vanished. Because the humans changed too. Faster. Their fleet split into multiple vectors. Each group targeting specific weaknesses. Supply ships. Command relays. Communication hubs. They weren't attacking randomly. They were dismantling the structure of the fleet. "Admiral, our coordination network is failing. Signal delays increasing. We're losing synchronization." Talvek clenched his jaw. "They're isolating us." One by one, sections of the Accord fleet began to fall out of formation. Not destroyed. Disconnected. And in war, isolation is death. On the Aegis Prime, Iris watched in awe. "They're collapsing the entire command chain." Kale nodded. "Cut the head, the body follows." Educational insight, value add. This tactic reflects a principle known as center of gravity targeting, focusing on critical systems, like communication or leadership, rather than brute force destruction, making the enemy collapse from within. Back in the battle, Talvek made a decision. All units, manual control. Abandon synchronized command. A risky move, but necessary. And for the first time, the humans paused, not retreating, not advancing, observing, learning. Kale watched the shift. A small smile appeared. "Now this," he murmured, "is interesting." The battle changed. Now it was no longer a system versus system. No longer fleet versus fleet. It became something more raw, more direct. Skill versus skill. Ships maneuvered independently. Commanders made real-time decisions. Instinct replaced algorithms. And for a brief moment, the Accord held its ground. Talvek's fleet began to stabilize. Losses slowed. Counterattacks landed. Hope returned. Then, everything changed again. A new signal appeared. Unknown. Encrypted. Powerful. On every human ship. Systems synchronized instantly. On every Accord ship. Sensors went dark. "What is happening?" officers shouted. Talvek stared at the display. "No." His voice dropped. They didn't lose coordination. Pause. They were waiting. From the depths of human space, reinforcements arrived. Not hundreds. Thousands. A second armada. Hidden. Silent. Now unleashed. On the Aegis Prime. Iris turned to Kale. "You planned this." He didn't deny it. They needed to believe they had a chance. The second fleet moved like a closing fist. The Velker corridor became a trap, and the Accord fleet was inside it. Talvek stood still, watching the inevitable. "We've been outplayed," he whispered. His officer looked at him. "What are your orders?" Talvek closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. Clear. Resolved. Signal retreat. But it was too late. Human ships had already moved, blocking escape routes, controlling exits, not destroying, containing. And then, a transmission. From the humans. Broadcast to every ship. Every frequency. Kale's voice echoed across the battlefield. "This battle is over." Pause. "Stand down." Silence followed. Talvek stared at the stars. At his fleet. At the reality he could no longer deny. Then slowly, he gave the order. "All units, cease fire." For the first time in history, the Celestial Accord surrendered a battlefield. Not through destruction, but through realization. Far away, inside the deepest layers of the Accord archives, the SOL protocol unlocked further. New data appeared. Coordinates, fragments, clues, and one final line. Earth was not lost. Pause. It was hidden. Back on the Aegis Prime. Kale received the update. His expression didn't change, but his eyes did. Darker, sharper, more dangerous. Iris noticed immediately. "What is it?" she asked. Kale looked at the data, at the truth they had been chasing for centuries, then spoke quietly. "They lied to us." Pause. "About everything." The war was no longer about control. It was about truth. And when that truth came out, the galaxy wouldn't just change. It would break. The surrender at the Velker corridor did not bring peace. It brought something far more dangerous. Truth. For the first time in its long history, the Celestial Accord was no longer in control of the narrative. Their fleets had failed. Their authority had cracked. And now, their secrets were beginning to surface. Inside the Accord's central archive vault, layers of encrypted data continued to unlock under the activation of the SOL protocol. Files long buried. Records deliberately erased. Histories rewritten. Archivist Elyon Mar stood alone in the dim chamber, watching streams of forbidden information scroll before him. His hands trembled. Not from fear, but from realization. "We didn't just hide them," he whispered. Pause. "We hunted them." The chamber doors burst open. High Arbiter Lysara Ven entered, her form glowing intensely. "You accessed restricted layers without authorization." Elyon didn't turn. "You need to see this." A projection filled the room. Old footage. Ancient war records. Human ships. Different from now. Less advanced. But still, formidable. And surrounding them, Accord fleets. Hundreds of them. The footage showed coordinated strikes. Systematic attacks. Entire human colonies being targeted. Lysara froze. "This is fabrication." Elyon shook his head slowly. "No." He brought up another file. Directive 0, Preemptive Containment. Lysara's light flickered violently. "That directive was never approved." "It was executed," Elyon replied. "Educational insight, value add." In governance systems, secret directives like this reflect preemptive threat elimination doctrine, where a rising power is neutralized before it can challenge existing authority. Historically, this often leads to long-term instability and unintended consequences. And humanity was the consequence. Far from the crumbling authority of the Accord, aboard the UHS Aegis Prime, the atmosphere had shifted. No longer calm. No longer calculated. Now, it was focused. Admiral Kale Ryan stood before a classified display. Coordinates, encrypted maps, fragments of something long lost. For centuries, humanity had searched. Across ruined colonies, through dead systems, into regions even light struggled to escape. And now, they had a lead. Commander Iris Vale stepped closer. Are we sure this is real? Kale didn't hesitate. It's real. Pause. But it's not where it's supposed to be. The coordinates didn't point to a system. They didn't match any known star chart. They pointed to something else. A region labeled only as null space. Iris frowned. That's impossible. Null space isn't a place, it's a theoretical boundary. Kale nodded. Exactly. Educational insight, value add. In astrophysics theory, regions like null space refer to areas where conventional spacetime models break down, often linked to extreme gravitational distortions, quantum anomalies, or artificial manipulation of spacetime itself. Meaning, Earth hadn't just been hidden. It had been removed from reality as they understood it. Back in the Accord, chaos escalated. Lysara stood before the full council once more. But this time, she wasn't defending authority. She was revealing truth. The humans were not abandoned, she said. Silence. They were targeted. The chamber erupted. That's impossible. Who authorized this? This is treason against the Accord itself. Elian stepped forward. It wasn't the Accord as it exists now. He activated another file. A list of names. Ancient leaders. Founders. The First Council. Grathkul growled. They're dead. Yes, Elian said. But their actions are not. The realization spread like poison. Everything the Accord stood for, peace, balance, order, was built on a lie. And then, the worst news arrived. A transmission. From humanity. Not a threat. Not a demand. A declaration. On every screen. Every world. Every system. Kale Ryan appeared. For the first time. The face of humanity was seen across the galaxy. Calm. Focused. Unshaken. You built your power on silence, he said. Pause. On erased history. His eyes hardened. We remember everything. The display shifted. Ancient footage. Accord fleets attacking human colonies. Proof. Undeniable. Gasps echoed across entire civilizations. You didn't just forget us, Kale continued. You tried to erase us. Back in the council chamber. No one spoke. Because there was nothing left to say. Kale's voice lowered. But you failed. The screen changed again. Now showing human fleets. Not attacking. Not advancing. Waiting. We didn't come back to destroy the galaxy, he said. Pause. We came back to fix it. Then, the final words. The ones that changed everything. We are going to find Earth. And when we do, asterisk. A long silence. Even across light years. It felt heavy. We will uncover who took it. Transmission ended. Back aboard the Aegis Prime. Iris exhaled slowly. That changes everything. Kale nodded. No. Pause. It reveals everything. Suddenly, an alert triggered. Urgent. High priority. Admiral, the AI announced. We are detecting movement inside null space. Kale turned sharply. Show me. The display activated. And for the first time, they saw it. Not a planet. Not a star. Something far more impossible. A massive structure. Encasing something inside. Hidden beyond reality itself. Iris whispered. Is that? Kale's voice dropped. Cold. Certain. Earth. But before they could react, the structure moved. Not physically, but dimensionally. Shifting. Awakening. And then, a signal. Not human. Not Accord. Something older. Access detected. Containment protocol active. The screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. Then Kale spoke. One sentence. Quiet. But filled with something far more dangerous than anger. We were never meant to find it. And now that they had, something else. Had noticed. Silence. Not the calm silence of space. Not the quiet between stars. This was something deeper. A watching silence. On the bridge of the UHS Aegis Prime, every system had gone still after the message from null space. No alarms. No motion. Just one line echoing in every mind. Containment protocol active. Commander Iris Vale broke the silence first. That wasn't Accord technology. Admiral Kale Ryan didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked onto the darkened display. "No," he said finally. "It wasn't ours either." Across the fleet, sensors struggled to reconnect. Signals flickered. Data streams collapsed. Then, slowly, the image returned. The structure surrounding Earth. Now, fully visible. It was enormous. A shell unlike anything ever constructed. Layer upon layer of geometric plating, stretching across millions of kilometers, shifting constantly as if alive. But it wasn't just a shell. It was a prison. Educational insight, value add. In advanced theoretical engineering, a structure capable of enclosing a planet and existing partially outside normal space would require multidimensional energy stabilization, a concept suggesting control over spacetime itself, far beyond conventional civilizations. Which meant one thing. Whoever built it was not just advanced. They were ancient. Suddenly, the structure moved again. Sections unfolded. Massive openings formed. And from within, something emerged. Ships. But not like any seen before. They were smooth, silent, almost perfect. No visible weapons. No engines. No markings. Yet their presence alone distorted space. On every human ship. Warning systems activated. Threat level. Unknown. Iris whispered. "They've been guarding it." Kale's expression hardened. "No. Pause. They've been hiding it." A transmission came through. Not in human language. Not in Accord dialect. But somehow, everyone understood it. The subject must not be released. Iris frowned. "Subject?" Kale stepped forward. "That's not a warning." Pause. "It's a fear." Back in the Celestial Accord, the entire galaxy was watching. Every system. Every species. Because for the first time, this wasn't about power. This was about truth. Lysara Ven stood frozen. "What did we unleash?" she whispered. Back at null space, the unknown fleet moved first. Without warning, they attacked. Not with visible weapons, but with distortions. Space twisted. Gravity bent. Time itself seemed to fracture. Entire sections of the human fleet flickered. Pulled out of sync with reality. Stabilizers failing. Temporal drift detected. Iris gripped her console. "This isn't a battle, it's physics breaking." Kale remained calm. Adapt. And humanity did what it always did. They learned. Within seconds, human ships began recalibrating. Shields adjusted to frequency distortions. Navigation shifted to predictive movement. Weapons recalculated for spatial instability. They didn't understand the enemy fully, but they understood enough. "Target the structure," Kale ordered. Iris looked at him sharply. "Not the fleet." Kale's eyes didn't move. "That fleet isn't the threat." Pause. "It's the lock." The human armada moved as one. Not toward the enemy, but toward the prison. Kinetic weapons fired. For the first time, the structure reacted. Ripples spread across its surface. Cracks formed. The unknown fleet intensified its attack. Ships vanished. Systems collapsed. Reality twisted harder. But the humans didn't stop. Because now, they understood something crucial. Educational insight, value add. In high-level conflict strategy, identifying the true objective, rather than the visible threat, is key. Destroying the control system, the prison, can neutralize the entire defense structure. "Push forward," Kale commanded. Losses increased. Ships disappeared. But the formation held. Because humanity had faced extinction before. And survived. Finally, one shot broke through. A massive kinetic strike. Direct impact. The structure cracked. Light burst from within. The unknown fleet froze. For the first time, they hesitated. Then, the prison shattered. What emerged was not what anyone expected. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a creature. It was blow, alive, unchanged, floating in silence. But something was different. Signals flooded every system. Not artificial. Not alien. Human. Billions of voices. Memories. Data. History. Iris gasped. "It's not just a planet." Kale finished the thought. "It's a record." The truth unfolded instantly. Earth had not been hidden to protect the galaxy. It had been hidden to protect humanity. Long ago, when the Accord tried to erase them, humanity made a choice. Not to fight. Not to run. But to preserve themselves. They turned their homeworld into something more. A living archive. A backup of their civilization. Hidden beyond reach. Beyond time. And the unknown beings? They weren't jailers. They were keepers. Guardians of something too valuable to lose. The message returned. But now, it had changed. The subject is stable. Pause. Transfer of custody initiated. The unknown fleet stopped attacking. Then, slowly, they moved aside, letting humanity pass. On the Aegis Prime, silence filled the bridge. Iris whispered, "They were waiting for us." Kale nodded slowly. "We were the final key." Back across the galaxy, everything changed. The Accord's lies were exposed. Their power collapsed. Not through war, but through truth. Systems didn't rebel. They walked away. And humanity? They didn't conquer. They rebuilt. Not as rulers, but as protectors. Because they had learned something no other species had. That power without responsibility leads to destruction. And survival without purpose means nothing. Standing before Earth, for the first time in centuries, Kale Ryan spoke softly. "We're home." And for the first time, humanity wasn't a myth, wasn't a weapon, wasn't a forgotten story. They were something greater. They were the future.